What if every tool for self-mastery is also a weapon in disguise? Do you ever feel like your mind is being used against you? It is. In Part 2, we expose the darkened version of those 50 mind hacks. You learned habit stacking for growth. A manipulator uses it to stack the chains of control. They weaponize your virtues, turning your empathy into a trap. This isn't a blueprint for success, it's a blueprint for your submission. We expose these techniques so you can see the attack before it happens. 51. The 1% escalation. Compounding the victim's submission. In the world of self-help, the 1% daily improvement rule is praised as the secret to mastery. It's the idea of Kaizen, where small consistent gains compound into extraordinary results over time. The math of mastery is simple. 1% better each day makes you nearly 38 times better in a year. This approach is powerful because it removes the intimidation of big goals. Instead of a massive leap, you just focus on the next small step. This gradual, patient consistency is what builds empires and forges champions. But this same math of mastery can be inverted. A master manipulator uses this exact compounding principle not to build, but to destroy. They don't apply 1% improvement to themselves. They apply 1% escalation to their victim. They know, just as the rule states, that massive leaps or overnight transformations of abuse would be rejected. The victim would flee. But a 1% escalation of control, that is almost invisible, that is insignificant, almost laughable. It removes the intimidation of the abuse, allowing the victim to adapt to it. This is the boiling frog principle disguised as patient consistency. On day 1, it's a simple suggestion about what you wear. On day 10, it's a backhanded joke about your best friend. On day 30, it's a playful request to see your phone. On day 100, it's a full-blown, rage-filled demand to know your password. Each step is only slightly worse than the day before. The victim adapts to the new normal, never seeing the mountain of control they're climbing. A toxic boss does this by asking you to stay just 10 minutes late on a Tuesday. The next week, it's 20 minutes. The next, it's a quick check-in on Saturday. Each is a tiny bit, a small action compounding their control over your time. Before you know it, your life has been transformed by their 1% daily theft. The victim's self-image is rewired. They don't have to be perfect victims. They just have to be slightly more compliant than they were yesterday. The compounding effect is that by the end of the year, the victim is 38 times more controlled, more isolated, and more resigned. The manipulator has made their control unstoppable, not through a single act of aggression, but through the patient, quiet, and relentless application of 1% escalation. 52. The illusion of choice, engineering a one-option prison. The modern world is obsessed with choice, yet psychology proves the opposite of what we expect. We believe more choices equal more freedom, but in reality, too many options create decision fatigue, hesitation, and regret. This choice overload is a silent killer of momentum that leads to paralysis. The healthy advice, therefore, is to deliberately eliminate one option. This reduces mental clutter and allows you to make faster, more confident choices. A dark psychologist, however, looks at this paralysis not as a problem to solve, but as a state to induce. They love that choice overload is a silent killer of momentum. But they don't deliberately eliminate one option to help. They create the sea of endless what-ifs, and then eliminate every possibility, except the one that benefits them. This is a two-step process. First, they create the choice overload. They don't just present a problem, they flood you with endless possibilities and what-if scenarios. If you want to leave, you might be on the street, or you could lose your friends, or what about your job? This is the buffet with 50 dishes, and all of them are terrifying. This is designed to make your mind spiral into the exact paralysis the technique describes. Second, After creating this fog, they step in as the hero. They don't just remove one option, they remove all of them. I know it's overwhelming. Let's make it simple. Just come with me. Just sign the paper. Just let me handle it. A con artist does this by overwhelming you with 3 complex investment plans, pros and cons, charts and data, until you are fatigued. Then they say, "Look, I can see you're confused. Let's just go with the gold plan. It's the simplest. Just sign here." They remove the other options they invented. An abusive partner floods the victim with what-ifs. You'll be on the street. You'll never see the kids. You'll be poor. You'll be lonely. They create the sea of endless what-ifs. Then they remove them. Or, you could just stay. It's faster, lighter. They have taken every possibility off the table entirely. All possibilities except submission. 53. Forced catastrophe. Projecting a nightmare to become the savior. The concept of visualizing the worst-case scenario is a counterintuitive mental strategy rooted in Stoic philosophy. The premise is that anxiety comes from the unknown, from the vague swirling what-ifs that haunt your mind. By deliberately imagining the absolute worst thing that could happen in vivid detail, you remove its mystery. You drag those fears into the light. The goal is to walk yourself through the worst possible outcome, such as failing the presentation or being rejected, and then visualize your next move. You adapt and rebuild. You realize you can survive. This strips fear of its power. The dark psychologist inverts this. They also drag fears into the light. But they are not your fears. They are their scripts, and they never let you get to the "I can survive it" part. Their goal is to magnify the fear, not shrink it. They make you visualize the absolute worst thing, losing the deal, being alone, and then they stop the visualization. They leave you in the rubble and present themselves as the only next move. A cult leader, for example, doesn't say, "Visualize leaving the group and see how you will thrive." They say, "Visualize leaving. See yourself failing publicly, cast out, your family rejecting you, your soul lost. See it. Feel it." They induce the vague, swirling what-ifs. You don't survive it. You are terrified by it. The challenge is not rehearsed. It's created. A controlling partner does the same. "You want to leave me? Go ahead. Visualize it. Imagine trying to pay your rent. Imagine being alone. You won't survive it. You'll collapse. You'll come crawling back. The emotional armor isn't for you. It's from them. They prepare you for the worst by being the worst. They don't free you to pursue the best. They hold you back with the power of the very fear they installed. This isn't disarming fear. It's aiming it. 54. The creative vampire. Stealing your insight, claiming your genius. Keeping a personal idea bank is a celebrated technique for creatives. It's a private vault where your sparks of inspiration can be stored, protected, and multiplied. The logic is sound. Ideas are fragile. They fade quickly if not recorded, and the brain is a terrible storage unit. You might have $1 million concept in the shower, but it dissolves within hours. By capturing every thought, insight, or creative impulse, no matter how raw or seemingly irrelevant, you create a reservoir for compounding creativity. You can revisit these half-formed ideas when old ideas collide with new perspectives. A dark psychologist, often a covert or cerebral narcissist, loves this concept. But they don't want you to have a private vault. They want to be your vault, or more accurately, they want to rob it. This is the creative vampire. This person doesn't just steal ideas, they steal the spark. This is a two-phase process. Phase 1. Devaluation. You have a flash of insight. You're excited. You share it with them. They immediately dismiss it. That's a throwaway line. That's raw and irrelevant. That will never work. They make your $1 million concept feel worthless. You lose it, not to the noise of daily life, but to their targeted criticism. Phase 2. Theft and rebranding. Months later, they present that exact idea in a meeting or at a party. But now, it's their extraordinary business strategy. They've revisited your bank. When you object, "Hey, that was my idea," they gaslight you. What are you talking about? That late-night scribble? You were just rambling. I'm the one who saw the patterns emerge. In the workplace, this is the boss who hunts for your inspiration, claims it as their own, and gets the promotion. In a relationship, it's the partner who convinces you that your sparks are only valuable once they refine them. They aren't fueling your creativity, they are siphoning it. 55. The sunk cost trap. Weaponizing your past to chain your future. Avoiding the sunk cost fallacy is one of the hardest mental skills to master. It's the ability to cut your losses and walk away from a failing path, no matter how much time, money, or energy you've already invested. This fallacy is fueled by ego and emotion. It's the voice that says, "I've already spent so much. I can't quit now." We cling to a doomed relationship because of the years together. We cling to a business that's bleeding money because we've poured our savings into it. The brutal honesty is that those costs are gone forever. Successful people pivot quickly. They don't let past sacrifices dictate their future. They make choices based on future potential. A dark psychologist understands this fallacy perfectly. It is not a cognitive bias they avoid. It is the primary tool in their kit. It is their single greatest weapon for keeping a victim trapped. They don't avoid it. They enforce it. They know this chains you to a losing game, and their primary job is to keep you throwing good resources after bad. How do they do it? They fuel your fallacy with ego and emotion. They are the voice that says, "I've already spent so much. I can't quit now." This is the classic doomed relationship. You're miserable. You want to leave. The manipulator says after 5 years, after everything we've been through, you're just going to walk away from all those past efforts? They remind you of the late nights and savings you poured into the relationship. They are fueling your ego. I'm not a quitter. A cult leader or scam artist demands past sacrifices specifically to create sunk costs. Give us your money. Cut off your time with family. Invest your energy. The more you invest, the harder it is to admit it was a failing path. The manipulator never lets you ask, "If I weren't already invested, would I still choose this today?" They only ask, "Look at what you already chose. You can't quit now." 56. Narrative poison. How manipulators weaponize stories to control reality. Speak in stories for persuasion is the ancient primal skill of influence. The logic is simple. Facts inform, but stories transform. This is because we are wired to remember narratives long before humans had written language. This wiring still controls how we connect, trust, and decide. A story bypasses logic and speaks directly to the emotional core. It activates mirror neurons, causing listeners to feel what the characters feel, which builds empathy and trust. Instead of stating dry terms like persistence leads to success, you tell the story of the entrepreneur who failed 5 times. This lowers defenses and plants ideas so deeply, they feel like the listener's own. The dark psychologist knows facts inform, but stories transform better than anyone. They just want to transform you into a compliant subject. Their stories are not for persuasion. They are for programming. They are narratives of fear, obligation, and guilt. They don't tell the story of the entrepreneur. They tell other stories. First, they tell the story of a tragic past. This is their primary tool. They share the gripping account of their terrible ex or abusive childhood. This isn't for connection. It's to build empathy and trust and lower defenses. It plants a seed of obligation. I am wounded. Therefore, you cannot criticize me. You must save me. Second, they tell the story of your imagined betrayal. They don't use dry terms. They speak in stories about how you abandoned them when you just went out with friends. This narrative transforms your facts, e.g., "I was just at dinner." Into their story, you are a betrayer. Third, they tell the story of a fictional threat. They are all out to get us. We are the only ones who see the truth. This story sneaks past skepticism and plants ideas of paranoia and isolation. They know facts may prove a point, but stories make people care. They tell stories to make you care more about their emotional core than your own. You act not because they told you to, but because you've already lived their message in your mind. 57. Calculated restraint. Weaponizing the pause you are never allowed. Pausing before reacting emotionally is the difference between being controlled by your emotions and using them as a tool. In the heat of the moment, anger flares, fear spikes, and your brain shifts into survival mode. Logic shuts down, instinct takes over, and damage is done. The pause is your lifeline. Even just a few seconds, a deep breath, counting to 5, breaks the chain between trigger and reaction. It gives your rational mind time to re-engage and choose your next move. This restraint is pure power, because you get to respond wiser instead of reacting emotionally. A dark psychologist, particularly a cold or cerebral one, is the master of this restraint. But their pause is not for wisdom. It's for calculation. Even more insidiously, they deny you this lifeline. They trigger you specifically to prevent you from pausing. This is a two-part manipulation. First, they weaponize their own pause. When you are reacting emotionally, they are perfectly calm. This is their pure power, but their pause is not for wisdom. They are pausing to ask, what outcome do I really want here? The answer? Your submission. They are pausing to craft a calculated response that will inflict maximum damage. They are not fumbling for words. They are responding strategically to find the weakest point in your emotional armor. Second, they deny you the ability to pause. This is a tactic called reactive abuse. They are the heat of the moment. They are the trigger. They will poke, prod, and insult you until you finally react emotionally. The moment you do, the moment you fail to pause. They pause and say, "Wow, look at you. You are out of control. You are the abusive one." They hijack your emotional state to prove their own sanity. They maintain their center by ensuring you lose yours. 58. Reframing your failure as their proof. The feedback trap. Reframing failure as feedback is a cornerstone of a healthy mindset. It's mental alchemy that turns what most people fear into the very fuel that drives you forward. This technique strips failure of its sting and redefines it as nothing more than information, data for growth. Failure in truth is neutral. The emotion you attach to it is a choice. Every misstep reveals hidden variables, a skill that needs sharpening, or a blind spot. The people who rise the fastest aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who mine it for wisdom. A dark psychologist loves your missteps, but they will never let that failure be neutral. They are the ones who attach the emotion for you, and that emotion is always shame and inadequacy. They reframe your failure as feedback, but the feedback is not data for growth. The feedback is, you failed because you are not good enough. Without me. A toxic mentor or boss is a master of this. You failed on a project. A good boss would say, let's find the hidden variables and see what data we can get. The toxic boss says, this is feedback that you are not capable of handling this. From now on, I need to approve every step. Your failure is not fuel. It is justification for their micromanagement. It is not a stepping stone. It is a stop sign that redirects you to their desk. In a relationship, this is even more sinister. You failed to balance the checkbook. This isn't neutral data. It is proof of your inadequacy. The feedback is, see? You can't even handle this. I'll take care of the finances from now on. They interpret failure as a verdict on your worth because it benefits them. They mine it for wisdom, but the wisdom is how to control you more. They don't avoid failure. They encourage it. They set you up to fail, so they can reframe that failure as feedback, that you stop holding back. Your submission. 59. Hijacking your legacy. Replacing future you with present them. Asking, what would future me thank me for? Is a powerful mental time travel technique. It's designed to slice through indecision and procrastination by forcing you to align your choices with your long-term self-interest. It shifts your perspective from the impatient, comfort-seeking present self to the wiser, more disciplined version of you. In the moment, it's easy to chase comfort. Skipping the workout feels harmless. Putting off the hard conversation feels easier. But when you project yourself into the future, you see that your future self either thanks you for your discipline or resents you for your neglect. This engages your brain's empathy for yourself and helps you avoid regret. The dark psychologist sees this long-term vision as a threat. They cannot compete with the wiser version of you, so they must hijack the question. They subtly, or not so subtly, replace future me with present them. Your brain's empathy is engaged, but it's not for yourself, it's for them. Your long-term self-interest is replaced by their short-term emotion. A guilt-tripping parent or partner does this constantly. You want to go to the workout, but they reframe it. You're going to the gym? Now? When I'm feeling so sad? You're spending the money on that class? When we are trying to save, the question stops being what would future me thank me for, and becomes what would they resent me for. A cult or high-control group uses this as its entire model. They are your future self. Don't chase comfort. Avoid discomfort by leaving the group. No, future you, i.e., your immortal soul, your place in the organization, will only thank you for your discipline in aligning your actions with their doctrine. They engage the emotional weight of regret before it happens, the regret of betraying them. You stop making choices to be better later. You start making choices to make them feel better now. They shrink the gap not between who you are today and the person you know you could be, but between who you are today and the tool they need you to be. 60. The crafted cage. Using constraints to suffocate and control. Constraint thinking is a mental shift that turns limits into launch pads for innovation. Most people see constraints, a lack of time, money, resources, or options, as walls that block possibility. But in reality, constraints are the very conditions that force your brain to think differently. It's in restriction, not abundance, that creativity often thrives. When resources are stripped away, you are pushed into unfamiliar territory and forced to explore angles you would normally overlook. History is full of breakthroughs born from constraints, from artists painting masterpieces with only 3 colors to entrepreneurs building million-dollar companies from a garage. This mindset reframes limitation as a challenge and asks, how can I do more with what I already have? A dark psychologist loves constraints, but they are not using them. They are imposing them on you. They are the lack of time. They are the lack of money. They are the lack of resources. Their goal is not to spark your creativity. It is to contain it. The limit does not become the edge that sharpens your brilliance. It becomes the cage that blocks possibility. This is financial abuse. The manipulator engineers a lack of money. They take control of your bank account. You are now forced to dig deeper. But you are not innovating a $1 million company. You are innovating how to do more with what they give you. Your creativity is reduced to figuring out how to feed your family on a $20 allowance. The constraint didn't fuel you. It hobbled you. This is isolation. The manipulator creates a lack of resources by cutting you off from friends and family. You are forced to explore angles and think differently. But the problem you're solving is not how to build a business. It is how to survive my abuser's rage without my support system. You are forced to be resourceful in your own prison. They kill perfectionism and ideal conditions by ensuring your conditions are never ideal. They stop you waiting for perfect resources to appear by ensuring no resources appear. The thing you thought was holding you back is holding you back, because they built it. 61. The Bedtime Interrogation. Priming the subconscious for control. The human mind is uniquely vulnerable in the moments before sleep. We are not shutting down. We are transitioning. As the conscious mind releases its grip, the subconscious opens up, ready to sort, process, and consolidate. Self-help gurus correctly identify this as a profound opportunity. They call it priming your mind before sleep. They advise you to use this fragile twilight state to feed your brain blueprints for success. You are told to vividly imagine the life you want, to replay your wins, or to focus on a challenge and visualize yourself solving it with ease. The logic is sound. Your subconscious becomes a workshop, and what you feed it before sleep, it will marinate in all night. You can program your mind to work for you while you rest, allowing you to wake up not just rested, but aligned, motivated, and one step closer to your goals. A dark psychologist understands this mechanism better than anyone. But they do not see a tool for self-improvement. They see a weapon of surgical precision. They do not want to prime their mind. They want to prime yours. They know your subconscious is a workshop, so they make sure to stock it with their materials: poison, anxiety, and doubt. The manipulator intentionally withholds peace at bedtime. This is not a passive act. It is an active strategy of psychological warfare. Instead of letting you drift off with purposeful thoughts, they hand your mind poison to marinate in. This is the partner who deliberately starts a difficult conversation right as you are turning out the lights. This is the boss who sends a quick question email at 10 p.m., full of vague criticisms, knowing you will see it. They are not looking for a resolution. They are planting a virus. This is the bedtime interrogation. As you lay there, exhausted and suggestible, they don't ask, "What was great about your day?" They ask, "Are you sure you're happy here? Don't you think you were a little rude to my friend earlier? What if you get fired tomorrow?" These are not questions. They are seeds of anxiety. They are planting problems in your mind, fully trusting that your subconscious will do the rest. They replay worries, arguments, or failures, but not their failures. Yours. They remind you of a mistake you made, a bill you forgot, or a way you disappointed them. The goal is insidious, to ensure you never truly rest. While you sleep, your mind isn't solving problems. It's spinning in the hamster wheel of their narrative. You don't wake up aligned with your goals. You wake up aligned with their concerns. You don't wake up motivated. You wake up motivated by the fear they installed the night before. You open your eyes, and the first thing you feel is a vague, unnamed dread. You are already one step closer to what they want. A person who is tired, anxious, destabilized, and far easier to control. 62. The trauma loop. Using spaced intervals to reinforce doubt. Learning in spaced intervals, often called spaced repetition, is widely considered the most potent and efficient learning technique. It is the science-backed way to make knowledge stick permanently, turning short-term memorization into deep, lasting mastery. The principle is simple. Instead of cramming, you revisit information at increasing gaps of time. You review it hours later, then days later, then weeks later. This process works because it takes advantage of the brain's forgetting curve. By reactivating the memory just before it is about to fade, you are forced to engage in effortful retrieval. This struggle is the point. It sends a powerful signal to your brain. This information matters. Keep it accessible. Each time you work harder to recall the information, the neural connections are strengthened until the knowledge becomes an unshakable, solid mental imprint you can access effortlessly. A dark psychologist understands this mechanism of permanent imprinting. But they are not interested in helping you learn a language. They are interested in teaching you your place. They use this technique not for mastery, but for conditioning. They don't want to make knowledge stick. They want to make trauma and self-doubt stick. This is the trauma loop. Instead of spaced repetition of facts, it is spaced repetition of faults. The manipulator intuitively knows that constant, 24/7 abuse is less effective. It becomes white noise and leads to quicker escape. The true path to lasting mastery over a victim is intermittent. They will be wonderful for hours, or days, or even weeks, the increasing gap. Then, just as your forgetting curve begins to heal, just as you start to feel safe, they force you to revisit the trauma. They will bring up a mistake you made 6 weeks ago. They will suddenly, out of nowhere, reintroduce the information that you are worthless, or ungrateful, or incompetent. You are forced into effortful retrieval of your shame, fear, and inadequacy. This struggle sends a powerful signal to your brain. This pain matters. This is the truth. This is why the on-again, off-again cycle of an abusive relationship is so disorienting. The manipulator is, consciously or not, running a spaced interval program. They are reactivating the memory of the abuse just before it's about to fade. Each recall strengthens the pathways of your trauma, making it easier to access in the future. You stop wasting time on relearning what you've already forgotten. In this case, your lesson. Every review locks the knowledge, your supposed inferiority, deeper. Soon, what once felt like effort becomes second nature. The mental imprint is complete. You no longer need them to tell you you're worthless. You do it to yourself effortlessly. 63. The input prison. How manipulators force you to control the uncontrollable. Focusing on inputs you control is a core tenet of Stoic philosophy and modern psychology. It is the mental discipline of pouring your energy into the actions, habits, and decisions within your power, while releasing the obsession with outcomes you cannot dictate. Most people live in frustration because they tie their happiness to results, landing the deal, getting the promotion, or winning someone's approval. But outcomes are influenced by countless external factors: timing, luck, other people's decisions. When your self-worth hinges on these, you surrender control of your emotional state. The liberating shift is to focus on inputs. You cannot control whether a client says yes, which is the outcome, but you can control how many high-quality proposals you send, which is the input. You cannot control the scoreboard, but you can control your effort, process, and consistency. This mindset removes the paralyzing fear of failure, and ironically, often improves results. A dark psychologist hears this advice and builds a prison from it. They love the idea of you focusing on your inputs, but they create a system where your inputs are irrelevant, and the only input that matters is the one you can never perfect, pleasing them. The manipulator creates an input prison. First, they sever the connection between your input and any logical outcome. You control your input by cleaning the entire house, a high-quality proposal. But the outcome is still them raging because you missed a spot. You focus on your process and consistency at work, but the outcome, the promotion, still goes to their unqualified friend. They teach you that your inputs do not matter unless they are directed at them. This is where the trap snaps shut. The manipulator becomes the only outcome. Your input is no longer sending proposals. Your input is managing their mood. Your habits become walking on eggshells. Your actions become anticipating their needs. Your decisions become guessing what will make them less angry. They have forced you to focus on inputs you control in a game that is, by definition, uncontrollable. You are now trying to control their uncontrollable. You are now trying to control their uncontrollable emotional state. This is a recipe for insanity. You are pouring all your energy into mastering your own execution in a game that is rigged. You measure success by your effort, but your effort is never good enough. This flips the script from a liberating mindset into a paralyzing one. You become obsessed with outcomes you cannot dictate, namely their moods, and are mastering what you can control, which is your total, silent submission just to survive. 64. The one-word curse. Branding your victim to define their reality. The one-word theme for the year is a popular mental clarity tool. It is designed to slice through scattered resolutions by anchoring your entire year to a single guiding principle. Instead of chasing a dozen disconnected goals, you choose one word that embodies who you want to be: discipline, growth, or presence. That word becomes your compass. Every decision is filtered through it. Psychologically, this works because the brain craves simplicity. A single, emotionally charged word is easier to remember and more likely to trigger action than a vague list. It is not just a goal. It is an identity you step into. A dark psychologist is also a master of simplicity. They too understand the power of a single, emotionally charged word, but they do not use it to define their year. They use it to define you. This is the one-word curse. The manipulator's goal is to replace your identity with a brand they have created for. While you are trying to be disciplined, they are telling you that you are lazy. While you are striving for growth, they are telling you that you are stuck. While you are practicing presence, they are telling you that you are distracted or selfish. This is not a guiding principle. It is a label. And just like the positive one-word theme, it works because the brain craves simplicity. They do not need a list of vague intentions or a complex argument to destroy you. They just need one word, repeated. This is the foundation of a whisper campaign. To a mutual friend: she's great, but just a little unstable. At a work meeting: great idea, but perhaps a bit naive. During a fight: you are ungrateful. They anchor this word to your entire year. Every decision, habit, and opportunity is now filtered through it. When you try to succeed at work, you are filtered through their label of naive. When you try to rest, you are filtered through their label of lazy. When you try to defend yourself, you are filtered through their label of unstable. The psychological effect is devastating. The word becomes a silent but constant whisper. Over time, you begin to become the word. Your brain begins to accept this identity they step into for you. They cut through the noise of your true complex self and replace it with their single guiding principle for you. They are not aligned with the direction. They are aligned with your destruction. And when they embody their theme of branding you, the year does not just change. You do. 65. The contrast trap. How to make freedom seem impossible. Practicing mental contrasting is a powerful, science-backed technique for achieving goals. It's the art of balancing the intoxicating pull of your dreams with the sobering weight of reality. It is a two-step process. First, you vividly imagine your desired future in rich detail, letting yourself feel the joy of achieving. Second, you immediately contrast it with the current obstacles standing in your way. This pairing of the dream with the friction is what ignites both hope and urgency. It tricks your brain into emotionally committing to the vision while activating the problem-solving regions needed to overcome the roadblocks. You do not just fantasize. You prepare, fight, and build. A dark psychologist inverts this. They also want you to practice mental contrasting, but they control both parts of the equation. They want you to vividly imagine their dream and contrast it with the obstacles they create. This is the contrast trap. The manipulator uses it to make their agenda seem like the only logical choice and to make your own freedom seem like a catastrophic one. First, they make you mentally contrast your life before them with your life with them. They will ask you to vividly imagine the obstacles of your past, your loneliness, your struggling career. Then they contrast it with their desired future, the perfect, intoxicating life they have given you. This pairing does not ignite urgency for your goals. It ignites gratitude for theirs. You are fused to them, believing they are the solution to your roadblocks. Second, and more insidiously, they use this when you try to leave. You vividly imagine your desired future, a life of freedom. You feel the joy of achieving it. The manipulator senses this, so they immediately contrast it for you. Oh, you want to leave. Let's mental contrast that. Vividly imagine the obstacles. Imagine your current reality without my income. Imagine the roadblock of finding a lawyer. Imagine the friction of telling your family. Imagine the joy of being alone, with no one. They activate the problem-solving regions of your brain. But the problem becomes, how do I avoid this new set of roadblocks? The collision between desire and reality is too great. The sobering weight of reality they have just described smothers your motivation. You stop passively wishing for freedom and actively plot to stay, because you have just been forced to contrast your beautiful dream with their catastrophic alternative. 66. The Asymmetric Gamble. How manipulators use you as their casino. Seeking asymmetric bets is a high-level strategy for creating life-changing rewards. It is the strategy of finding opportunities where the potential upside massively outweighs the downside. The worst-case outcome is limited, but the best-case outcome is exponential. This is how elite investors operate. They actively search for opportunities where losing costs them little but winning could multiply their wealth. A simple example is reaching out to a potential mentor. The downside is small. You lose a little time, effort, or ego. The upside is exponential. That person could open doors for you. You keep stacking attempts without fear of ruin. A dark psychologist, particularly a corporate or financial sociopath, understands asymmetric bets better than anyone. But they have a secret. They take the bet, but you pay the downside. They use you as their casino. The manipulator's entire life is a portfolio of opportunities so tilted in their favor, it is criminal. They actively search for scenarios where they get the exponential upside, and someone else takes the limited, but very real, downside. This is the employee who pitches a bold idea to the CEO. It is an asymmetric bet, but it is your idea. If the bet fails, the downside is limited. For them, they simply say, well, it was your name's idea. You are the downside. You get fired. If the bet wins, they get the exponential upside. They get the wealth, influence, and skills. This is the entrepreneur who tests a small business idea with minimal upfront costs. The minimal cost is your life savings. It is an asymmetric bet for them. If the business fails, the downside is limited. They lose a little ego. You lose your future freedom. If it explodes, they multiply their wealth. This is the partner who bets on an affair. The downside is small. If they get caught, they just gaslight you. The upside is their thrill. You take the catastrophic downside of betrayal and disease. A manipulator stacks attempts without fear of ruin because the ruin is never theirs. It is yours. They are stacking your small losses. They consistently place asymmetric ones where you are the collateral. You are not their partner. You are their downside. 67. The mental prison. Installing a limited toolbox of thought. Building mental models for decision-making is about creating a set of thinking frameworks to cut through complexity. A mental model is like a lens you can apply to countless situations to make faster, smarter choices. The power lies in how they compress wisdom. For example, first principles thinking forces you to break problems down to their raw truths. Inversion asks, how do I avoid failure? The more models you collect, the sharper your decision-making becomes. You borrow insight from science, psychology, economics, and philosophy. You stop reacting blindly and start applying tested frameworks. A dark psychologist cannot thrive in a world where you have a toolbox full of proven thought patterns. A sharp mind is their enemy. A mind that can cut through complexity will cut through them. So, they do not help you collect models. They confiscate them. They build a mental prison for you, not a toolbox. Their goal is to break problems down not to their raw truths, but to one truth. Their truth. This is a tactic of thought stopping. They do not want you to borrow insight from science, psychology, and philosophy. They want you to borrow all your frameworks from them. They reshape the way you think by installing a limited set of mental models, and only 3 are allowed in the victim's toolbox. Model 1. It's all my fault. This is the primary lens. It is a framework that filters all complexity. Did they yell at you? Your model says, it is because I made them yell. Did they cheat? Your model says, it is because I was not enough. Model 2. They are my only hope. This is the inversion model, twisted. You stop asking, how do I succeed? You only ask, how do I avoid failure? By their standards, this flips your perspective until success and their approval are the same thing. Model 3, the world is a threat. This framework is used for isolation. First principles thinking is twisted. The raw truth becomes, everyone outside this relationship is trying to destroy us. My family is the problem. Science and psychology are the problem. The manipulator ensures you rely on gut instinct shaped by limited experience, an experience they have curated. You stop reacting blindly to the world and start reacting predictably to them. You see the world clearly, through the one lens they gave you. 68. The Illusory Truth. How manipulators use the rule of 3 to create facts. The rule of 3 for focus is a mental clarity hack designed to cut through the chaos. The core idea is to choose just 3 main outcomes to focus on each day, each week, and even each year. This limitation is deliberate. It is not 30, it is 3. When everything is a priority, nothing is. This forces brutal honesty about what moves the needle. Psychologically, 3 is the magic number. It makes targets feel achievable, not overwhelming. It amplifies ambition by creating visible momentum. A dark psychologist also understands that 3 is the magic number. But they do not use it for focus. They use it for illusion. They use it to create a fact. This is a well-known cognitive bias called the Illusory Truth effect. Research shows that the brain will mistake familiarity for truth, a concept known as cognitive ease. The more you hear a lie, the more familiar it becomes, and the more true it feels. And psychologically, the magic number to make a lie feel true is often 3. The manipulator uses this rule of 3, not for your focus, but for their narrative. They do not choose 3 main outcomes, they choose 3 lies. This is the partner who wants to isolate you. Repetition 1, day 1, subtle. Your sister seems busy for you. A small, achievable target. Repetition 2, week 2, emotional. I do not think your sister likes me. She's trying to break us up. Repetition 3, month 2, the fact. I know your sister is trying to destroy our relationship. You have to choose. By the 3rd time, the lie feels familiar. Your brain has focused on it. It starts to feel true. The manipulator has forced brutal honesty, not about what moves the needle, but about a needle they invented. This is also the foundation of negging. Repetition 1. That's a nice dress. My ex had one just like it. Repetition 2. You're so smart about books. It's cute how little you know about the real world. Repetition 3. You're lucky you have me. No one else would understand you. They amplify their ambition to control you by creating your momentum of self-doubt. They master the rule of 3 not to direct focus like a laser, but to scatter your self-worth. 69. The what's missing attack. Engineering perpetual inadequacy. Asking what's missing, not just what's wrong, is a mental shift for breakthroughs. Most people fixate on what's broken, hunting for flaws, mistakes, and failures. This defensive mindset rarely leads to true breakthroughs. The expansive question is what's missing. This flips your perspective from repair to creation. It invites you to spot hidden gaps that could become openings for innovation, connection, or growth. What's wrong fixes the past. What's missing builds the future. A dark psychologist hears this and seizes it as a blueprint for abuse. They love asking what's missing, because they know that what's wrong can be fixed. But what's missing is a bottomless pit. It is the perfect, unanswerable accusation. This is the what's missing attack. The manipulator flips your perspective from repair, which implies you are fixable, to creation. A standard you can never create. This is the perfectionist boss. You fix what's wrong, the typo in the report. You fix the flaw. but they do not care. They fixate on what's missing. The report is fine, but it's missing a soul. It's missing passion. It's missing that X factor. How do you fix that? You cannot. It is a hidden gap designed to be an opening not for innovation, but for control. This is the narcissistic partner. You fix what's wrong. You apologize for the mistake. You repair the flaw. But it is never enough. They ask what's missing. Yes, you said you love me. But there's something missing in your tone. Yes, you bought me a gift, but it's missing thought. This is the ultimate defensive mindset, the one they induce in you. You are perpetually defensive, trying to build a future for a person who finds gaps everywhere. This transforms your mindset from reactive to proactive in the worst way. You proactively scan your own behavior, asking, what am I missing? How will I fail next? You stop just trying to avoid failure. You start actively designing your entire life around guessing what immeasurable thing they will find missing next. You are not an architect of possibility. You are a prisoner of perpetual inadequacy. 70. The information siege. Destroying all disconfirming evidence. Seeking disconfirming evidence is the rare discipline that separates truth from belief. It is the act of deliberately searching for proof that you might be wrong. Most people collect confirming evidence like trophies. This is confirmation bias. It feels safe, but it breeds blind spots. The scientist hunts for opposing views. They actively ask, what would prove me wrong? This demands humility and protects you from being wrong. The dark psychologist, by contrast, operates in preacher mode. Their identity is tied to an idea. The idea that they are right and you are wrong. They never seek disconfirming evidence. In fact, they go one brutal step further. They do not just avoid disconfirming evidence. They actively destroy it. They are intellectual armor personified. They do not just reject data that contradicts them. They delete it. This is an information siege. The disconfirming evidence is your memory. This is gaslighting. You say, you told me you would be home at 6. This data contradicts their belief that they can do no wrong, so they destroy the data. I never said that. You remembered it wrong. You are crazy. They actively ask, what would prove me wrong? And then they destroy that proof. The disconfirming evidence is your friends and family. Your best friend is an opposing view. Your best friend is an opposing view. She is proof that you might be wrong about the manipulator. She is data that contradicts their narrative of control. So what do? They hunt for your opposing views and destroy them. They slander your friend. They forbid you from seeing her. They force you to delete her number. They destroy physical evidence. Old photos of you looking happy before them? That's disconfirming evidence. Journals, letters, even your own clothes, anything that contradicts their sacred relic of who they say you are, must be eliminated. They protect their beliefs not by defending them, but by creating a sterile information vacuum where no opposing views can survive. They do not just avoid the truth. They execute it. 71. The apex predator's breakfast. Weaponizing the hardest task first. This productivity discipline, often called eating the frog, is a foundational pillar of high-performance psychology, famously attributed to a quote by Mark Twain. The concept is simple. If the first thing you do each morning is to eat a live frog, you can go through the day with the satisfaction of knowing that is probably the worst thing that is going to happen to you all day long. In modern terms, your frog is your most important, high-leverage task, the one you are most likely to avoid because it feels heavy, uncomfortable, or intimidating. The strategy is to tackle it before anything else. This is devastatingly effective for one primary reason: cognitive resources. Your willpower, what psychologists like Roy Baumeister call ego, is a finite resource. It's a muscle that fatigues. From the moment you wake up, every minor decision, what to wear, whether to check email, what to say in a text, drains this energy. By eating the frog first, you allocate your peak mental and emotional resources to the one task that matters most. Once that frog is eaten, everything else feels lighter. You've already won the most important battle of the day, creating a ripple effect of confidence and unstoppable momentum that sets the tone for everything that follows. You are not just being productive, you are training your brain to be victorious. But this principle has a deeply dark shadow, a manipulative application that is just as effective. A strategic manipulator, especially one with narcissistic or sociopathic traits, understands your ego depletion better than you do. They don't just eat their own frog, they make you eat their frog. They will, with deliberate and malicious intent, become your hardest task first. A narcissistic partner or a toxic boss will intentionally manufacture a crisis or start an argument first thing in the morning. They will send that ambiguous, anxiety-inducing email or text before you are even out of bed. This is not a request for communication. It is an attentional ambush. They are forcing you to expend all your peak willpower and mental energy navigating their manufactured drama, delaying your own goals. By 9 a.m., you are already drained, depleted, and carrying the weight of their intimidation. This makes you pliable, reactive, and easy to control for the rest of the day. They take control of your day, so you have no energy left to build your own momentum. While high achievers use this discipline to build empires, manipulators use it to maintain their toxic kingdoms. You must guard your first victory of the day. The first battle is for your focus. Ensure the frog you eat is the one that feeds your future, not the one that poisons your present. 72. The Saboteur's Playbook. How manipulators use and prevent premortems. The premortem is the strategic art of imagining that your plan has already failed, and then working backward to figure out why. It is a powerful flip of the usual success-focused mindset. While a postmortem dissects a failure after it has happened, a premortem is an act of prospective hindsight. You simulate disaster in your mind. You gather your team or your own thoughts and operate from a single brutally honest premise. It's 6 months from now, and this has completely failed. What happened? This process is a direct assault on our innate optimism bias, that dangerous blinder that makes us blindly charge ahead hoping for the best. It also shatters groupthink, the social pressure to conform and not rock the boat. The premortem removes the blinders by making failure the starting point. It psychologically bypasses ego, pride, and wishful thinking, and opens the door to ruthless reality-based planning. It exposes weaknesses and hidden pitfalls before it's too late, allowing you to design countermeasures and build a plan that's not only stronger, but also less fragile. However, a dark psychologist, the narcissistic leader, the controlling partner, the toxic visionary, despises the premortem. Their entire house of cards is built on your optimism bias and wishful thinking. The premortem is a direct threat to their fragile ego and their entire manipulative plan. They will actively sabotage any attempt at one. When you, in a moment of clarity, try to confront possible pitfalls by asking, "But what if this goes wrong?" What if the client hates it? They will not respond with intention. They will react with aggression. They will reframe your strategic foresight as negativity, disloyalty, or not being a team player. They will gaslight you. "Why are you trying to sabotage this? Don't you believe in me? I thought you were on my side." This is a thought-terminating cliché designed to shame you into silence. And while they are actively discouraging your premortem, they are fastidiously conducting their own. Their project is you. Their premortem is a private strategic analysis of their manipulative campaign. They ask themselves, "It's 6 months from now, and the target still has self-esteem. The project has completely failed. What happened?" The answers expose the weaknesses in their plan. Their support system is still intact. Their resources, finances, are independent. Their communication with the outside world is not broken down. These failures then become their new to-do list. The pitfalls they identify are your strengths. They then design countermeasures to systematically dismantle every single one of them. They are not hoping for the best. They are preparing for collapse. Your collapse. 73. Attentional hijacking. How manipulators fracture your focus to control your mind. This is a core truth of the modern world. Your focus is the most valuable and limited resource you own. It is the gateway to your mind. Time is finite, but attention is what determines the quality of that time. You can have hours and achieve nothing if your focus is fractured. It is the raw material of genius, the prerequisite for deep work, and the foundation of meaningful relationships. Your attention is the currency of achievement. It is also the primary target of the dark psychologist. A manipulator doesn't want your time. They want your attention. They know that if they can control your mental space, they can control your thoughts, emotions, and actions. In today's world, attention is under constant attack, not just from every notification, but from the manipulator. They become the ultimate distraction, the open tab in your brain. They create drama and chaos, screaming for instant response, so that even when they are not present, your focus remains fractured. This is a deliberate strategy of attentional hijacking. They will create 1,000 cognitive leaks. Every time you switch tasks from your life to their drama, you pay an invisible cost. This is known as attention residue. Your brain doesn't just snap back. It takes minutes to fully re-engage, but the manipulator doesn't give you minutes. They send the next ping. They will interfere with your work, your hobbies, and your conversations with others, demanding your focus immediately. The goal is to drain your mental energy until you're left with nothing but shallow scraps of focus. This depleted state is where you are most vulnerable. You are too exhausted to invest in deep work, your own goals, or the relationships that truly matter. You become too tired to see the patterns of their abuse. You are living in a constant state of reaction. This is why protecting your attention is not a productivity tip. It is an act of psychological warfare. Setting hard boundaries, turning off notifications, and learning to say no without apology are your primary weapons. You must create sacred, uninterrupted time for deep work. This is not selfish. It is survival. You must guard your mental space as fiercely as your most precious possession, because it is. Do not let anyone squander it, leaving you broke in every sense. 74. The Breadcrumb Trail. How manipulators use curiosity to hijack your mind. This mental hack is about weaponizing your brain's natural hunger for exploration and novelty against your own procrastination. The brain is wired to seek closure. This is called the Zeigarnik effect. An unanswered question, or an incomplete pattern, creates a cognitive tension, a restless craving for resolution. This is why cliffhangers keep you watching shows, and why you can't stop reading a mystery. You can harness this positively by framing a dreaded task as a curiosity hook. What's the most surprising insight I could find in this data? Or what's the hidden factor everyone else is missing? You trick your brain. The resistance fades and the work starts to pull you in. Your emotional state shifts from dread to intrigue. But this powerful psychological pull is the foundational mechanism of the most toxic and common manipulation tactic: breadcrumbing. A manipulator exploits your natural need for closure by turning themselves into the puzzle, the unanswered question, the permanent cliffhanger. They don't give you a clear answer. They give you an endless supply of curiosity hooks. These are the breadcrumbs: vague texts, cryptic comments on social media, future faking, we should go there someday, and hot and cold mixed signals that keep you constantly off balance. They are masters of the incomplete pattern. They will start an intense conversation and then suddenly vanish, leaving you restless and craving resolution. Your brain, now hijacked by the Zeigarnik effect, shifts its entire focus from your life to theirs. You are no longer productive. You are obsessed. You are being pulled forward, not toward your goals, but into their game. They have successfully hijacked your productivity trigger. You can't focus on your own report because your brain is busy researching them, trying to find the hidden factor that explains their behavior. The quest is no longer your work. The quest is them. This is why this tactic is so draining. It consumes the same mental energy you're supposed to be using for your own life. When you use this on yourself, it's a brilliant hack. When you feel it being used against you, that irresistible pull to decode someone, recognize that your curiosity is not a trigger for playful exploration, but a chain being locked into place. 75. The echo of power. Why speaking last gives you absolute control. This is a subtle but powerful influence strategy. Most people rush to speak early in group settings. They are eager to share their thoughts, stake their claim, or prove their value. They are driven by a need for validation or a fear of being overlooked. In doing so, they reveal their hand before they've seen the cards on the table. They expose their arguments, their emotional investments, and their blind spots first. Speaking last is not fighting to be heard. It is choosing the perfect moment to speak, so that when you do, your voice carries more weight. The core of this strategy is information dominance. When you speak last, you get to observe. You don't just hear what people say, you see how they say it. You are mapping the emotional landscape. You notice their tone, their hesitations, their confidence levels, their emotional investments. You watch alliances form, tensions rise, and unspoken fears surface. By the time it's your turn, you're no longer guessing. You know where the room stands. You know which arguments have failed and which ones resonate. You have identified the gaps in logic and the unspoken emotional core of the debate. This is where the light and dark paths diverge. A true leader uses this data to address unspoken objections, synthesize fragmented ideas, and unite differing opinions toward the best outcome. They speak with the authority of someone who has heard all sides. A manipulator, however, uses this same data to exploit. They have read the unspoken fears and tensions, not to heal them, but to poke them. The manipulator speaks last to deliver a final word that subtly undermines the consensus or plants a seed of paranoia. For example, "This has been a great discussion, and I support the plan. I just hope that tension I'm sensing between the teams doesn't cause this to fail like last time." This carries immense psychological weight. They didn't attack. They waited. They waited. They used silence as a weapon to gather intelligence, then spoke with the perceived authority and thoughtfulness of the final speaker. They have framed the conversation as it closes, and they have just framed it for failure, positioning themselves as the only one wise enough to see it coming. 76. The victim's cage versus the strategist's key. Turning "why me" into "what now?" This is the mental shift that in a single breath takes you from powerless victim to decisive strategist. When life blindsides you with loss, betrayal, failure, or crisis, the instinct to ask, "Why me?" is almost primal. It's an emotional cry for justice, an attempt to make sense of the pain. But why me is a dead-end question. Psychologically, it is a state of rumination, a loop of passivity. It keeps you rooted in the past, obsessing over fairness and circumstance. It builds a cage of resentment and helplessness. The question, "what now?" is the key to this cage. It is an action-oriented command that snaps your focus to the present and the future, the only two realms where change can actually begin. It demands a response, activates the problem-solving parts of your brain, and redirects all your energy toward action and options. It is the shift from someone things happen to someone who makes things happen next. This mental shift is not just a self-help tool. It is the primary defense against one of the most common forms of manipulation: victim playing. A dark psychologist weaponizes "why me?" They live in that question, obsessing over the circumstance of how everyone has wronged them. Their why me is a performance, a carefully crafted cry for justice designed to pull you in and hijack your energy. They trap you in the loop of self-pity, their self-pity, forcing you into the role of rescuer, defender, and enabler. While you are busy trying to make sense of their pain and validate their past, they are making things happen next, usually securing more control or resources from you. Furthermore, a manipulator needs you to stay stuck in the shock of why me. After they blindside you with betrayal, they want you to be rooted in the past. As long as you are paralyzed, asking why me, you are not moving forward. You are not looking for options. You are not building your case or your escape plan. You remain the powerless victim. The brutal truth is that what now is an act of defiance. It is a declaration that your future is more important than their offense. It finds the door, kicks it open, and steps into whatever comes next. 77. The 9 p.m. Declaration. How defining tomorrow's top 3 cages your manipulator. This mental clarity ritual is a battle plan for your mind. It's about ending the day with intention so you can start the next one with precision. Instead of waking up and wasting your precious mental energy in chaos, scrolling emails, checking messages, and reacting to demands, you begin the day already armed. The night before, you take 2 minutes to decide what your top 3 priorities will be. These aren't random tasks. They are the high-leverage actions that move your goals forward. This single habit removes decision fatigue, builds momentum instantly, and ensures you spend your time on what matters most instead of reacting to whatever screams loudest. By deciding the night before, you also allow your subconscious to work on those problems while you sleep. But this is more than a productivity hack. It is a profound defense mechanism. Most people open their day in chaos. That chaos is the manipulator's entry point. A manipulator's priorities always scream loudest. They thrive on hijacking your focus before you've even had your coffee. If you wake up wasting your precious mental energy figuring out what to do, they will tell you what to do. They will manufacture a crisis. See Topic 71, Eating the Frog. Send a destabilizing text, or hijack your focus with a passive-aggressive email that demands an immediate response. Your day is stolen before it begins. You are living in reaction to their agenda, not living with intention. Defining your top 3 high-leverage actions is a safeguard. It's an anchor against the chaos. It is a written declaration of what you have decided matters. When their urgent but trivial demand screams for your attention, you have a predefined battle plan to measure it against. This forces brutal clarity, allowing you to see their manufactured urgency for what it is, an attempt to hijack your most valuable hours. This habit is a quiet form of power. You are not just ending your day, you are setting tomorrow up to be unstoppable. 78. The 10,000-foot defense. Using perspective zoom out to neutralize manipulative panic. This is the mental escape hatch that pulls you out of the suffocating grip of stress. When you're overwhelmed, your mind narrows its focus into tunnel vision. The problem in front of you is magnified until it feels like the only thing that exists. This is an amygdala hijack. Your brain's stress response is screaming that this immediate problem is a threat to your survival. The perspective zoom out deliberately reverses that. You step outside your immediate emotions and imagine the problem from a higher vantage point. You ask, how will this matter in a year, in 5 years, in the scope of your entire life? You can even push further, viewing the problem from the perspective of history. This mental trick signals to your nervous system that this is not, in fact, a survival threat. This lowers emotional intensity and frees mental bandwidth for rational thinking. It doesn't erase the problem, but it shrinks its emotional weight so you can face it with clarity. This technique is the direct antidote to a manipulator's favorite weapon, catastrophic thinking. A manipulator needs you to stay in that narrow, panicked tunnel vision. They specialize in manufacturing the immediate crisis. They frame every minor issue as urgent and absolute. They use language like, if this fails, our lives are over. This one mistake is the end of the world. You've ruined everything. This is a deliberate tactic to lock you in a fight or flight state. Why? Why? Because when you are in a panic, you cannot think rationally. You can't see solutions. You can only react. And in that state of panic, the manipulator positions themselves as the only calm, rational one, the only person who can save you from the disaster they just invented. The perspective zoom out shatters this illusion. It is your shield. It is your shield. When they try to engulf you in their manufactured panic, you mentally zoom out. You ask, will this person's drama matter in 5 years? Will this urgent crisis matter in 1 year? The answer is almost always no. This is how you regain the ability to act calmly, instead of reacting blindly. You see their tidal wave of stress for what it is, a ripple in a vast ocean. You remember you are far bigger than the moment they are trying to trap you in. 79. The third path. How to escape the manipulator's false dichotomy. This mental discipline is about refusing to accept the trap of all or nothing thinking. Binary thinking, this or that, yes or no, win or lose, is seductive because it's simple. Our brains love clear black and white categories. It's a cognitive shortcut that saves energy. But in reality, most situations live in shades of gray. The most powerful solutions, the real breakthroughs, live in that gray space. They are the third option. The creative alternative that only appears when you step outside the false trap of two extremes. This is the realm of innovation and true problem solving. This binary trap is not just a cognitive error. It is the single most common and effective weapon in the dark psychologist's arsenal. It is a logical fallacy known as the false dichotomy. A manipulator doesn't wait for you to fall into binary thinking. They create it for you. They frame every situation as a false either-or trap. They present you with two fixed paths, and they make sure both paths benefit them. Classic examples include, you're either with me or you're against me. You can either quit your job like I want, or stay miserable and prove you don't care about our future. You can either accept this deal or walk away. They need you stuck arguing over these two options because they control both of them. Both options lead to a win for them. This tactic works because it activates your brain's fight-or-flight response, narrowing your perspective. It forces you to react instead of create. They don't want you to slow down, expand your mind, and reframe the problem. Seeking the third option is an act of revolution. It is refusing to play the game you've been handed. When they say, quit your job or stay miserable, the third option is, I will renegotiate my role, or I will find a new job that meets my needs. When they say, accept this deal or walk, the third option is, I will propose new terms you haven't considered. This approach makes you unpredictable, which a manipulator despises. They need you on their two fixed paths. The moment you step onto a third one, you've taken back all the advantage. You stop playing their game and start designing your own. 80. The trauma bond. How manipulators weaponize mental subtraction. Practicing mental subtraction is the counterintuitive gratitude hack that makes you feel the value of what you have by imagining it's gone. It's about vividly picturing life without the people, possessions, or abilities you currently take for granted. The effect is instant and visceral. This process short-circuits hedonic adaptation, that dangerously easy way we overlook our blessings once they become normal. When you feel the pain of imagined loss, you are allowing yourself to feel the ache without actually losing any. Then, you snap back to reality and appreciation surges in a way simple lists can't create. You realize how much you already have. This is a beautiful tool for self-awareness. And it is also the single most insidious tool of the coercive controller. A manipulator weaponizes mental subtraction against you. They don't allow you to take them for granted. In fact, they live in mortal fear of it. So they force you, daily, to vividly picture life without them. This is the core of emotional blackmail and threats of abandonment. They will constantly say, "You'd be nothing without me." Can you even imagine how empty your life would be? Just think about it. They are forcing you to create a controlled absence, to make you feel the ache of loss without them actually having to leave. Every time they give you the silent treatment or storm out, they are giving you a small taste of that loss, forcing you to practice mental subtraction. This isn't a gratitude hack, it's a fear hack. It trains you to associate any act of independence, seeing friends, succeeding at work, having your own opinion, with the visceral pain of total loss and abandonment. This is how a trauma bond is forged. You are not staying out of love. You are staying out of a manufactured terror of the absence they've forced you to imagine. The antidote is to run the exercise on your own terms. Practice mental subtraction on your own job, your own skills, your own friends. When you realize how much you already have that is separate from them, their threat of subtraction loses its power. You realize that losing them doesn't mean losing everything. It might just mean losing the source of the threat. 81. The anchor of deception. Weaponizing compared to what? This simple question, compared to what, is one of the most powerful mental clarity weapons you can possess. It is a scalpel that cuts through bias, emotional fog, and misleading narratives. Its function is to force your brain to anchor every judgment, fear, or decision against a real alternative instead of letting vague impressions dictate your choices. The human brain is flawed. We are wired to judge things in isolation. A task feels risky, an offer feels expensive, or a job offer might seem low, simply because we are making decisions in a vacuum. That risk only seems terrifying because you haven't weighted it against the risk of doing nothing. This question strips away the emotional drama and forces you to see the trade-offs clearly. It is the antidote to lazy thinking, forcing you to move from an emotional reaction to a data-driven comparison. For example, you may feel your salary is low. Compared to what? The industry average. Your last job? The cost of living in your city? Or just a vague, undefined feeling of lack? Each comparison leads to a different conclusion. However, this vacuum is the primary hunting ground of the dark psychologist. A manipulator thrives when you judge their actions in isolation. They hate the question compared to what, because their entire strategy is to create the anchor for you. This is the core of the anchoring bias, a cognitive bias first theorized by Tversky and Kahneman. They know you will instinctively latch onto the first piece of information given. A con artist never just presents their price. They first present information without a baseline, or, more accurately, they invent a false baseline. They will point to a luxury item at 10 times the price, so their fraudulent item seems like a bargain in comparison. They anchor you to their fiction. A toxic partner weaponizes this constantly. When you object to their behavior, they won't compare it to a healthy standard. Instead, they will compare it to a fabricated, worse alternative. You think I'm controlling? My ex was 10 times worse. You're lucky. They neutralize your complaint by becoming the manipulator, forcing you to compare them to their own anchor, not to the real-world alternative of a respectful partner. This is how politicians and marketers operate. Crime is rampant. Compared to what? Last year, 10 years ago, they select the baseline that serves their narrative. The defense is to consciously reject the first anchor presented. When a manipulator gives you a comparison, recognize it as a tell. You must seek your own, external, objective data. You define the compared to what. 82. The Trojan Horse. How manipulators reframe competition as collaboration. The enlightened modern view of business and life is to reframe competition as collaboration. This is the mindset shift that turns rivals into allies and transforms the game from win-lose to win-win. The old battlefield view, where success is scarce and another's gain is your loss, is seen as an outdated, zero-sum game. This old thinking breeds insecurity, defensiveness, and short-sighted moves. The new reframe suggests that choosing to see competitors as potential collaborators opens the door to shared resources, mutual learning, and opportunities that pure rivalry could never create. It taps into one of the most powerful human instincts, connection. By approaching a competitor with curiosity instead of hostility, you turn tension into dialogue. Perhaps together you can serve a bigger audience or innovate faster. This co-opetition mindset reduces the mental exhaustion of constant comparison and leads to shared growth. It requires vulnerability and trust, but the potential payoff is a larger pie for everyone involved, rather than a fight over scraps. This optimistic view, however, is the perfect camouflage for a predator. A dark psychologist loves an opponent who wants to reframe competition as collaboration, because it signals a lowering of defenses and an open invitation for exploitation. This reframe is the ultimate Trojan horse. The manipulator sees the battlefield clearly, but they pretend to be a collaborator. A larger company will approach a smaller, innovative rival with curiosity instead of hostility. They will propose a strategic partnership, an alliance to share resources, and serve a bigger audience. The trusting startup, believing in a win-win collaboration, opens their books, shares their code, and reveals their mutual learning processes and strategic roadmap during these collaborative sessions. The predatory company learns everything it needs, then terminates the partnership, citing strategic misalignment. 3 months later, they launch a clone of the startup's product, using their superior resources to capture the bigger audience for itself. They use the language of connection to achieve a pure win-lose victory. This tactic sneaks past skepticism. The manipulator doesn't fight you. They collaborate with you until you have nothing left to give. Then they discard you. Never mistake an invitation to collaborate from a rival as pure goodwill. It is often a strategic move to gain intelligence and resources. True collaboration involves ironclad legal boundaries and a clear reciprocal exchange of value, not just an open-ended invitation to share. 83. The double-edged stance. Using body language to control your mood and theirs. This is the science-backed practice of changing your physiology to change your psychology. It operates on a simple feedback loop that most people misunderstand. We think emotions dictate posture. If you feel confident, you stand tall. If you feel defeated, you slump. But it also works in reverse. Your brain reads your body's signals and adjusts your emotional state to match them. This concept, known as embodied cognition, suggests that our thoughts are deeply intertwined with our physical state. You can, therefore, trick your brain into feeling a desired mood by deliberately adopting the posture, movement, and facial expressions associated with it. This is a powerful internal tool. Research by social psychologist Amy Cuddy popularized the idea of power posing. Standing tall, with chin up and shoulders back, can actually increase feelings of confidence and lower stress. When you sit up straight, lift your chin, and breathe deeply. Your nervous system interprets it as a sign of safety and strength. Your stress hormones drop, your voice steadies, and your thoughts sharpen. Even a forced smile can release feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Athletes do this before a game. They don't wait to feel ready. They become ready by using their body as a remote control for their mind. This remote control, however, can be used on others. A dark psychologist has mastered this reverse feedback loop, not just for internal confidence, but for external manipulation. This is the core of impression management. A con artist doesn't feel confident. They project confidence. They use open posture and steady eye contact to signal safety and strength, disarming their target. The most sinister application is as a weapon of cognitive dissonance. An abuser will sit perfectly calm, breathing deeply, shoulders back, perhaps even with a small patronizing smile, while saying something incredibly cruel or gaslighting. Their words are an attack, but their body is signaling safety. Your brain receives two contradictory signals. You hear the threat, but you see the calm. This dissonance makes you doubt your own reaction. You start to slump, your own stress hormones rise, and you feel defeated. They are using their calm physiology to highlight your emotional reaction, making you look and feel like the unstable one. They are using their body language to shift your mood into one of submission, all while maintaining a veneer of perfect control. 84. The controller's cadence. Practicing intentional breathing. Practicing intentional breathing is the fastest way to take control of your body, mind, and emotions. It is not a metaphor. It is biology. It taps directly into the switchboard of your nervous system. Your breath is one of the few functions controlled by both your conscious and subconscious mind, making it a direct lever to control your state. Most people breathe on autopilot, letting stress, posture, and distraction dictate their rhythm. Under pressure, breaths become short and rapid, feeding anxiety and tension. This is the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Intentional breathing, using slow, deep, purposeful breaths, flips this process. Techniques like box breathing, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, directly stimulate the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation system. Within minutes, your heart rate steadies, your mind clears, and emotional turbulence begins to settle. It anchors you to the present moment, pulling you out of past regrets and future worries. This is why Navy SEALs, elite athletes, and monks alike use it to stay sharp under extreme pressure. This tool has two critical applications in dark psychology. The first is as your primary shield. A manipulator's goal is to induce your fight or flight response. They want your breaths short and rapid. They want to feed your anxiety. They want your mind clouded by panic so you can't think rationally. When you feel that tension rising, your conscious decision to practice intentional breathing is an act of war. You are refusing to let them hijack your nervous system. You are seizing back control. The second application is as the manipulator's own weapon. How do they stay so calm while gaslighting you? How do they maintain that terrifying, cool detachment while you are in emotional turmoil? They are practicing intentional breathing. They are using it to keep their own fight or flight response at bay, not for peace, but for control. This allows them to lie more effectively, as their calm breathing and steady heart rate would even challenge a polygraph test, which primarily measures the anxiety response. This creates the cognitive dissonance we discussed in the previous topic. Your panic is contrasted with their calm, making you appear unstable. They have mastered their breath, so they can master you. You must master yours to defend yourself. 85. The preacher's fallacy. Thinking like a scientist to escape the manipulator's cult. This is the discipline of seeking truth instead of defending belief. It is a fundamental shift in how you process reality. The mind can operate in two modes, preacher or scientist. A preacher starts with a conclusion and hunts for evidence to justify it. They are defending a belief. A scientist starts with a question, tests reality, and is willing to be proven wrong. They are seeking truth. The danger of thinking like a preacher is that it locks you in intellectual armor. Once your identity is tied to an idea, your political stance, your self-image, you stop seeing clearly. You fall prey to confirmation bias. You instinctively reject data that contradicts you and surround yourself with people who agree. It feels safe, but it's a slow death for progress. The scientist mode is the opposite. You treat your ideas like experiments, testable, adjustable, and temporary. You're less concerned with being right than with getting it right. This demands humility and curiosity. You embrace the concept of falsifiability, championed by philosopher Karl Popper. A belief is only strong if you can clearly state what evidence would prove it wrong. Every mistake becomes data. Every failure becomes feedback. A dark psychologist is a preacher in the most malignant sense. They start with a conclusion that serves their ego. I am superior, You are flawed. Everyone is out to get me. Their entire life is then a performative hunt for evidence to justify this unfalsifiable belief. They aggressively reject all data that contradicts their narrative. If you succeed, that data is dismissed. You got lucky. If you fail, that data is cherished as proof. More insidiously, they force you into the preacher mindset to trap you. They create a cult of one. They feed you their conclusions. Your family is toxic. The world is dangerous. Only I can protect you. And force you to defend them as articles of faith. You become a preacher for their ideology, attacking anyone who presents contradictory evidence. The only way out is to re-engage your scientist mind. You must start asking questions again. You must test reality. You must seek disconfirming evidence. Topic 112. When they preach, your friend hates you. The scientist tests that hypothesis. The scientist calls the friend. This is what the manipulator fears most. Not an argument, but an experiment. The scientist is the one who wins. 86. The Addict's Loop. How manipulators weaponize rewarding effort. Rewarding effort, not just results, is the mindset shift that builds resilience and protects you from the invisible poison of perfectionism. Most people only celebrate when they win, hit the target, or achieve the milestone. This is a dangerous trap because you start linking your self-worth entirely to outcomes you can't always control. When results fall short, motivation collapses. Focusing on effort flips the script. Instead of asking, "Did I win?" you ask, "Did I show up fully?" This means you celebrate the training session, the sales calls, even if they didn't close, the writing session, even if the chapter still needs work. You are reinforcing the behaviors that lead to success, not just the moments of success. This is the core of Carol Dweck's growth mindset. Psychologically, this approach is powerful because it keeps your brain hooked on the process rather than the prize. It creates constant, reliable dopamine loops, which make you more likely to stick with hard, slow-building goals. It makes you more fearless to try, experiment, and push limits, as your self-worth is no longer on the line with every attempt. This powerful dopamine loop, however, is the exact mechanism of addiction. And it is the core tactic of the dark psychologist, intermittent reinforcement. A manipulator knows that rewarding results consistently makes you independent. But rewarding effort randomly makes you an addict. They don't praise you when you win. That would build your confidence. Instead, they ignore your wins and intermittently praise your struggle. You will work all week on a project, and they will ignore it. Then one day, you'll be burning out, making those sales calls, and they will flood you with affection. You are working so hard. You are so dedicated. I am so impressed by your effort. Your brain receives a massive, unpredictable dopamine hit, linked not to the result, but to the process of striving for their approval. This is how a slot machine works, as theorized by B.F. Skinner. It's the most addictive reward schedule known. This is how a trauma bond is built. You become hooked on the process of chasing the prize, their validation. You stop caring about winning in your own life. You only care about the dopamine hit from their praise. The defense is to seize control of the reward system. You must be the one to reward your own effort. When you celebrate your own process, you break their monopoly on your dopamine and take your power back. 87. The Cage of Scarcity. How manipulators weaponize constraints to control. This is the counterintuitive practice of turning limits into launchpads. Most people see constraints, a lack of time, money, resources, or options, as obstacles that suffocate creativity. But history shows the opposite. Constraints, when embraced, force the mind to dig deeper, think sharper, and invent solutions that abundance would have never demanded. The human brain loves efficiency, but hates effort. When everything is available, we default to easy, predictable answers. But when the usual paths are blocked, our minds start forging new ones. This is why some of the greatest innovations were born in times of scarcity. Limited film budgets sparked creative camera tricks. Tight deadlines birthed iconic campaigns. The 140-character limit of early Twitter created an entirely new form of communication. Constraints sharpen focus. They strip away distractions and force you to ask better questions. Like, what's the simplest way to make this work? True innovation is born from having just enough to force genius. This positive framing, however, hides a deeply sinister truth. A dark psychologist doesn't just embrace their own constraints. They impose constraints on others. This is the core of coercive control. They intentionally create a lack of time, money, and resources for their victim. But their goal is not to fuel your innovation. It is to suffocate your will and block your escape. The manipulator will take control of the finances, putting their partner on a strict budget. This money constraint isn't designed to spark creative budgeting. It's designed to block the usual paths to freedom. You can't save money for a deposit. You can't hire a lawyer. You can't afford a bus ticket. They impose time constraints. They demand all your free time, leaving you no time for friends, family, or hobbies. This constraint doesn't sharpen your focus. It strips away your support system, your resources. By controlling your time, money, and options, they are blocking all the easy, predictable answers to your problem. Escape. They are forcing you into a box where the only remaining option is compliance. They have turned a tool of innovation into a weapon of isolation. 88. The profiler's gaze. How manipulators exploit your mental patterns. Recognizing patterns in your thinking is the self-awareness skill that allows you to regain control of your life. It's about exposing the hidden scripts that are quietly steering your decisions, emotions, and behaviors. At its core, it's the practice of stepping outside the constant stream of your thoughts to observe them from a distance. You are spotting the recurring loops, triggers, and biases that run your life on autopilot. Most people live inside their thoughts. They mistake familiar mental habits for truth. These are the cognitive distortions that become self-fulfilling prophecies. I always mess this up. People can't be trusted. I'm not the type to succeed. These repeated storylines become invisible walls, trapping you in the same reactions and outcomes. The process requires brutal honesty. You begin tracking when procrastination strikes, when self-doubt whispers. Once you see the pattern, you have the power to change it. You can interrupt the cycle. You're no longer just a passenger. You're the one holding the wheel. This self-awareness skill, however, is also the primary offensive weapon of the dark psychologist. A manipulator doesn't care about their own patterns. They are obsessed with yours. They are experts at recognizing patterns in your thinking. They step outside your thoughts and observe you like a profiler. They are spotting your recurring loops, your triggers, and your biases. They listen for your hidden scripts. When you say, "I always mess this up," they don't reassure you. They take a note. When they see that a critical email triggers your defensiveness, or that a certain topic always sparks avoidance, they log that information. These are not just observations. They are notes for their playbook. They will even test your triggers, poking you just to see how you react, then filing away that reaction for later use. Once they see your pattern, they don't help you change it. They use it to control you. They will intentionally trigger your self-doubt right before a big interview. They will intentionally spark your defensiveness to make you look unstable in front of others. They are the ones holding the wheel of your emotions, and you are the passenger trapped inside the invisible walls they have learned to exploit. Self-awareness is your only defense. You must see the patterns before they do. 89. The mental war game. How manipulators rehearse your defeat. Rehearsing future challenges in your mind is the mental equivalent of a fire drill for your life. It's the deliberate act of visualizing high-pressure, high-stakes situations before they happen, not with optimism, but with realism. This isn't wishful thinking. It's stress inoculation. When something catches you off guard, your brain's survival wiring kicks in. Adrenaline spikes, rational thinking narrows, and you fall back on panic or hesitation. When you've mentally rehearsed, you've built a blueprint in your mind. You've already felt the pressure. Your brain treats the real moment like a familiar path, reducing fear and sharpening focus. This is why athletes, negotiators, and surgeons visualize complex procedures. Crucially, this technique also prepares you for failure and recovery. You can imagine things going wrong, then walk yourself through how you'll adapt and regain control. When the challenge comes, you're not shocked, shaken, or scrambled. You're ready. You must assume your opponent is doing this too. A dark psychologist lives in this state of mental wargaming. They are constantly rehearsing future challenges, and their biggest challenge is you discovering the truth. They mentally rehearse your most logical confrontations. They imagine you walking in with evidence of their lie. They imagine you catching them in a contradiction. And then, they rehearse their script. They practice their gaslighting response. "I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. You're crazy." They rehearse their feigned outrage and blame shifting. "How dare you accuse me after everything I've done for you?" They rehearse their tearful, fake apology to win your sympathy. They are rehearsing difficult conversations. Topic 103, to perfection. When the real moment arrives, you are filled with raw, unrehearsed emotion. You are caught off guard. They, however, are calm, focused, and executing a plan they have practiced dozens of times. They are not scrambling. They are ready. They've been here before. This is why you must rehearse too. You must rehearse the challenge of confronting them. You must imagine their gaslighting response, and then walk yourself through how you'll adapt and hold your ground. You must be as prepared as they are. 90. The poisoned trigger. How manipulators install your action cues. Collecting mental triggers that inspire action is the practice of building a personal arsenal of thoughts, images, sounds, and cues. The goal is to find stimuli that flip your brain from hesitation to movement in an instant. It's about knowing exactly what sparks your motivation, and then deliberately surrounding yourself with those triggers to create a custom ignition system for your own drive. This works because your brain is a pattern recognition machine that runs on classical conditioning. Certain stimuli can instantly shift your emotional state. A single line from a movie can make you feel unstoppable. A specific song can push you to run faster. A photo from a moment you were proud can make you tackle something. Once identified, you place them where they can't be ignored. The power of these triggers is that they bypass overthinking. They don't negotiate with your excuses. When you feel hesitation, you deploy the trigger and summon motivation on command. The same principle of anchoring, see topic 130, is a core tactic of the dark psychologist. But they are not helping you collect your triggers. They are installing theirs in you. A manipulator will intentionally create cues that shift your emotional state to one that benefits them. They are building a remote control for your emotions. They will create a trigger for fear or compliance. It could be a specific sound, the way they sigh, the sound of their keys in the door, or even a specific word. They will pair this stimulus with rage, criticism, or the silent treatment repeatedly. Soon, that sound alone is enough to flip your brain from calm to hesitation and anxiety, making you instantly submissive before they've said a word. They also install positive triggers. They will use a specific pet name or play a specific song only during moments of affection, the love bombing phase. This becomes a tool of intermittent reinforcement. You begin to crave that trigger because you associate it with the reward. They have built a custom ignition system for your compliance. Your triggers are no longer yours. They are the leashes they use to pull you. You must audit your triggers and diffuse the ones you didn't plant. 91. The Aegis of the Self. How an anti-goals list becomes your personal warning system. Keeping an anti-goals list is the deliberate act of defining exactly what you want to avoid in life. While most people obsess over what they do want, wealth, success, freedom, they rarely take the time to define what they don't want. Yet, It's often the things we tolerate or stumble into by accident that quietly erode our happiness and performance. An anti-goals list is your personal warning system, your set of non-negotiable boundaries. It is the blueprint for what you will not accept. This list could include items like, never work with people I don't trust, avoid projects that require weekend work, do not tolerate being yelled at, or refuse to engage in gossip. This clarity is a filter. It transforms your decision-making, allowing you to stop chasing opportunities that glitter but will eventually burn you out and start protecting the space for things you should. It is an active, conscious plan against failure, and it is an act of liberation, not limitation. However, a dark psychologist's entire strategy is to systematically identify and dismantle this personal warning system. Your anti-goals list is their hit list. They are masters at boundary testing, and they will use micro-steps. Topic 4. To erode your resolve. If your anti-goal is to avoid weekend work, they won't ask you to work a full Saturday. They'll ask for a quick 20-minute call on a Saturday morning. When you agree, your anti-goal has been violated, and the filter is now broken. If your anti-goal is never work with people I don't trust, they will gaslight you. Are you saying you don't trust me? After everything I've done for you, this frames your boundary as an attack on them, making you feel guilty for having it. While you are building your defenses, they are also living by their own anti-goals. A manipulator's anti-goals list is focused on control. Never allow the target to have a private conversation with their family. Avoid accountability at all costs. Never let the target feel confident for too long. Your anti-goals list is your confident for too long. Shield. Their anti-goals list is their sword. The battle is won by the person who refuses to compromise on their list, protecting their values and energy. 92. The Empath's Trap. How assuming positive intent becomes your greatest vulnerability. Assuming positive intent in others is the conscious choice to believe that most people's actions, even when clumsy or hurtful, come from a place of misunderstanding, pressure, or their own struggles, not malice. This is often taught as a high-minded, emotionally intelligent approach to life. It's not about being naive, but about disarming your instinct to see enemies where there may be none. When you assume negative intent, every delayed reply feels like rejection, and every disagreement becomes a battle. By assuming positive intent, you create space for patience, understanding, and better communication. Instead of reacting defensively, you become curious. Why did they say that? What might they be dealing with? This mindset diffuses conflicts before they escalate and protects your emotional energy. In a healthy world, this is a beautiful and effective tool for building stronger relationships. However, this conscious choice is the exact loophole that dark psychologists exploit. The text itself admits this. Yes, there are people who will exploit this goodwill. A manipulator's entire strategy is to bank on your assumption of their positive intent. They rely on you to find a reason for their bad behavior that is not malice. When they do something overtly hurtful or abusive, lie, insult you, or break a promise, and you confront them, they will immediately feign the very excuses you are primed to accept: misunderstanding, pressure, or their own struggles. They will say, "I'm sorry. I'm just so stressed from work. I didn't mean to yell. I wasn't lying. I just forgot. My mind is all over the place. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I was scared." Your generous mindset, your desire to be curious instead of accusatory, forces you to accept their excuse. You feel guilty for being suspicious. You feel guilty for being suspicious. You are being naive. You are being trained to ignore their actions, malice, and accept their words, feign positive intent. The source says these people are fewer than you think. In dark psychology, you must assume the opposite. A strategic defense is not to become a cynic, but to be a scientist. Topic 85. Assume positive intent once. Assume a pattern twice. A healthy person corrects their behavior. A manipulator exploits your forgiveness. 93. The Citadel of Focus. How meditation trains your attention to resist manipulation. This is the mental gym workout for the modern world. In an age of constant mental clutter and endless distraction, our untrained attention is like a leaky bucket. No matter how much effort you pour in, your progress drains away. Training your attention with meditation is the practice of strengthening the single most valuable skill you have, the ability to focus deeply on one thing without being hijacked. The technique is widely misunderstood. At its core, meditation isn't about emptying your mind. That's impossible. It's about learning to notice when your attention drifts and training yourself to bring it back over and over again. You focus on your breath, a sound, or a visual point. Your mind wanders. You notice it, and without judgment, you simply return to the focus point. That return is the rep, the mental push-up. Every time you do that, you're building the neural muscles of concentration. Over time, this practice changes how you move through life. You become less reactive, less pulled by every distraction, and more able to choose where your mind goes. This mental strength is the ultimate defense against a dark psychologist. A manipulator requires your untrained attention. They thrive in your mental clutter. Their primary tools: gaslighting, breadcrumbing, future faking, and moving the goalposts, really on your inability to focus deeply. A trained, meditative mind is their worst enemy. Consider gaslighting. A manipulator says, "I never said that." The untrained mind, full of clutter, doubts itself. Maybe I am remembering it wrong? The trained mind, the one that is sharper, can scan its memory with clarity and know that is a lie. Consider emotional hijacking. A manipulator tries to induce panic. Topic 78. The untrained mind is instantly hijacked. The trained mind has practiced noticing the drift. It notices the emotion rising. I am feeling panic, without identifying with it. It can observe the stress and then deliberately bring its focus back to a neutral anchor, like the breath. Topic 84. Meditation is not about escaping life. It's about sharpening the blade of your mind so you can cut through the noise, especially the noise created by a manipulator. It is the quiet forge where attention is tempered into steel. 94. The Vulture's opportunity. How manipulators exploit the hidden upside in setbacks. Looking for hidden upside in setbacks is the mental art of turning pain into possibility. This is a core tenet of Stoicism and resilience psychology. When life blindsides you, whether it's a failed project, a lost opportunity, or a personal disappointment, the instinctive reaction is frustration, self-blame, or despair. This mindset trains you to look deeper, to find the seed of advantage or redirection that you would have never uncovered without the failure. Setbacks feel like dead ends, but more often, they're detours. The source gives clear examples. A lost client might push you to refine your offer and attract a better market. A rejected application might lead you to a role where your talents shine brighter. A painful breakup might reveal parts of yourself you neglected, setting the stage for a healthier future. By asking, "Where is the advantage in this?" or "What might this be preparing me for?" you shift your brain out of victim mode and into opportunity mode. You don't just bounce back. You bounce forward, using the setback as a stepping stone. This admirable mindset, however, is also the precise worldview of a dark psychologist. They are masters at looking for the hidden upside, but they are looking for it in your setbacks. When you are in victim mode, they are in opportunity mode. A manipulator sees your pain as their possibility. When you suffer a setback like a failed project, they see the hidden upside. Your confidence is low, making you more susceptible to their influence. When you experience a lost opportunity, they see the advantage. You are now more desperate and willing to accept their lowball offer or unreasonable demands. They are vultures. But the most insidious manipulators don't just wait for setbacks. They create them to generate their own opportunities. A toxic boss will intentionally sabotage your project, the setback, to create the upside of making you look incompetent and justifying your demotion. A controlling partner will engineer a fight between you and your best friend, the setback, to create the upside of isolating you and becoming your only source of support. They are not just finding stepping stones, they are creating them out of your pain. While you should always look for the lesson in your own failures, you must be hyper-aware of anyone who seems to benefit too much from your losses. 95. The rotting foundation. Asking what's the core assumption? Asking what's the core assumption here is the mental X-ray that cuts through noise, complexity, and half-truths. It is a first principles thinking tool that exposes the single belief holding everything together. Most ideas, strategies, and opinions are built on unspoken assumptions. We take arguments at face value without digging down to uncover the hidden premise they depend on. But if the core assumption is wrong, every conclusion that flows from it is fragile at best, disastrous at worst. The source gives a perfect business example. A pitch claims, "We'll grow fast because the market is desperate for this product." That's the surface claim. The core assumption is that the market is truly desperate. If that's wrong, if the market is only mildly interested, then the entire structure of marketing plans, hiring, and investment crumbles. By isolating this belief, you can test it before committing to a doomed path. This mental tool is not just for business. It is the master key to dismantling psychological manipulation. Gaslighting, in its entirety, is the art of building a fragile argument on a false core assumption that the manipulator forces you to accept. They want you to argue about the conclusion, not the premise. Let's run the X-ray. Manipulator's argument. You're crazy and overreacting for being upset that I was out all night and didn't call. Surface claim. Your reaction is the problem. The core assumption. My behavior, disappearing all night without communication, was normal, acceptable, and not inherently disrespectful. The untrained mind will argue the surface claim. I'm not crazy. I'm not overreacting, and they will lose because they have implicitly accepted the core assumption. The strategic thinker uses this question. They ignore the conclusion and attack the assumption. Let's not talk about my reaction yet. Let's not talk about my reaction yet. Let's talk about your core assumption. Do you believe that your behavior was respectful? Is that a solid premise to stand on? This forces clarity. The manipulator's entire argument unravels because the foundation is rotten. They have no defense when you expose the hidden premise. 96. The long con. How manipulators think in decades, act in days. Thinking in decades and acting in days is the mindset of holding a vast long-term vision while taking relentless immediate action. It's the rare balance of patience and urgency that drives extraordinary results. This dual focus solves two major problems. First, people who only think short-term chase quick wins and shallow rewards, burning out and lacking direction. Second, people who only think long-term risk, getting stuck in permanent planning mode, always preparing but never moving. Thinking in decades gives you the psychological freedom of patience. It frees you from the desperation that drives bad decisions. A failed launch isn't a career-ending disaster. It's just one data point on a 10-year journey. Acting in days provides the urgency. It's the engine. It's the daily actions so small and consistent. They seem almost trivial. Like one email sent, one page written, one conversation started. Over time, these tiny actions compound into something massive. This exact mindset is also the blueprint for a master manipulator, the long con artist, or the cult leader. They are the ultimate long game players. Their target's weakness is only thinking in days, stuck in the chaos of the immediate. The manipulator operates on both levels. Their decade thinking, their vast long-term vision is the target's total isolation, financial dependence, and psychological capture. They have infinite patience. They are not driven by desperation. If the target resists them one day or sets a boundary, the manipulator doesn't see it as a disaster. They see it as a temporary setback on their long journey of erosion. Their day thinking, they take relentless immediate action using daily actions so small they seem trivial. This is the drip, 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 of micro steps. Topic 4. Day 1. A trivial criticism of the target's shirt. Day 5. A small lie to create doubt. Day 20. A tiny action to discredit a friend. Each action is so small that it's not worth fighting over, but these daily bricks compound over time to build a prison. The manipulator is patient enough to play the long game, but urgent enough to never waste a day in their campaign of control. 97. The empath's gaze. How strategic empathy becomes a manipulator's map. Role switching to understand perspectives is the deliberate act of stepping out of your own viewpoint and into someone else's mental and emotional world. It's about momentarily seeing through their eyes, feeling with their heart, and thinking with their priorities. This is not just passive empathy, it's strategic empathy, a skill that can dissolve conflict and strengthen influence. When negotiations stall, most people double down on their own position. Role switching shatters that barrier. You ask yourself the key question: if I were them with their history, fears, incentives, and pressures, how would this situation look? This mental shift forces you to let go of ego long enough to see the forces shaping their behavior. You uncover the hidden motivations behind their actions. This doesn't mean you agree with them. It means you gain the full map instead of fighting blind. This allows you to find a pathway where both sides can win and turns conversations from battles into collaborations. This strategic empathy, however, is the single most important offensive tool of the dark psychologist. A manipulator has mastered this skill. They are constantly role-switching into your viewpoint. But their goal is not to collaborate, it is to win. There is a critical distinction between cognitive empathy, understanding what someone feels, and effective empathy, caring about what someone feels. A sociopath often has extremely high cognitive empathy and zero effective empathy. They use role-switching as a profiling tool. They step into your role to find your fears, your incentives, and your unseen constraints. When they uncover your hidden fear of abandonment, they don't reassure it. They mark it on their mental map as your primary lever of control. When they see through your eyes and find your desperate need for validation, they know that intermittent praise, topic 86, will be their most effective weapon. The source says this tool gives you the full map. A manipulator uses this map not to navigate to a shared victory, but to find all your emotional weak points, all your psychological blind spots, and lay their traps. They are speaking from where you stand only to pull the rug out from under you. 98. The Exhaustion Ploy. How manipulators use rest as a weapon of control. Treating rest as a productivity tool is the radical rejection of the hustle culture lie that rest is laziness. In reality, rest is the fuel that makes high performance possible. The lie of hustle culture is that you are a machine. The truth is that you are a biological system that must recover. Recovery isn't separate from productivity. It's part of it. This is where the real growth happens. Sleep consolidates memories, strengthens problem-solving ability, and repairs the brain at a cellular level. Downtime, like stepping away from the desk or going for a walk, restores emotional stability, sharpens focus, and replenishes creativity. Athletes understand this instinctively. They know growth happens in the repair phase. They schedule recovery with the same intensity as training. When you treat rest as a tool, you start planning for it, not just fitting it in. You schedule sleep like a meeting. By resting more strategically, you achieve more in less time, because every hour you work is fueled by full energy instead of running on fumes. This biological necessity is also a primary target for a dark psychologist. Sleep deprivation is a classic tool of coercive control, used in interrogations and cults. A manipulator prevents your rest. They want you running on fumes. They need you to burn out because a depleted mind cannot fight back. A manipulator will not let you treat rest as a tool. They will sabotage it. They will intentionally pick fights late at night, knowing you have to work in the morning. They will send a barrage of anxious texts just as you are falling asleep, forcing your brain back into high alert. They will wake you up in the middle of the night to talk about their insecurities. They will create endless urgent tasks and crises that steal your downtime and invade your weekends. The goal is to destroy your repair phase. They need your emotional stability to collapse. They need your focus to be so depleted that you can't think clearly. An exhausted brain cannot see patterns, cannot plan an escape, and cannot find the energy to leave. Protecting your sleep is not just self-care. It is a vital act of defense. 99. The Resistance Blueprint. How a win journal defeats the negativity bias. Keeping a win journal is the practice of deliberately recording your victories, big or small. Its primary function is to serve as a weapon for countering your brain's negativity bias, that built-in tendency to focus on mistakes and failures while letting successes fade into the background. This bias is a survival mechanism, but in modern life, it drains motivation and skews your self-perception. A win journal is an active intervention. It turns fleeting moments of achievement into permanent reminders of your strength. Most people underestimate their progress because they only measure it against their ultimate goals. They overlook the daily wins, like finishing a tough workout or handling a difficult conversation well, and those moments vanish. The act of writing them down is more than a record. It's reinforcement. It builds confidence and momentum. On days when doubt creeps in, flipping through past entries is like reviewing an archive of proof that you are capable. It becomes a blueprint of how you succeed. This negativity bias is not just an internal problem. It is a manipulator's primary tool. A dark psychologist thrives on your negativity bias. They will actively work to amplify it. They act as your external negativity bias. When you have a victory, they will immediately overlook it, diminish it, or change the subject. They will reframe your win as luck or as something anyone could have done. However, when you make a mistake, they will seize it, magnify it, and turn it into a permanent reminder of your inadequacy. They are actively erasing your win journal and writing a failure journal for you. They don't want you to have a blueprint of how you succeed. They want you to believe they are the source of all your success, and you are the source of all your failures. This is why keeping a win journal, even in secret, is a radical act of defiance. It is you building an archive of proof against their narrative. It is undeniable evidence that they are wrong. It is reinforcement of your true identity, not the false, weakened one they are trying to build. 100. The Input Flood. How manipulators drown your creative stillness. Limiting input before creative work is the practice of protecting your mind from outside noise. It's about giving your brain space to generate rather than react. The modern world is anathema to this. Creativity thrives in stillness, but modern life offers none. Most people wake up and immediately check messages, scroll social media, or read the news. By the time they sit down to work, their minds are crammed with other people's thoughts, fears, and agendas. When you flood your brain with input right before you create, you dilute your own voice. The result is not innovation. It's imitation. It's imitation. You produce derivative ideas, diluted originality, and work that feels safe instead of alive. The solution is to create a buffer. If you have creative work to do, resist checking your phone, email, or feeds until it's done. Let your mind wake up inside your own world, not someone else's. This stillness and this unpolluted mental space are not just for artists. They are for strategists. And this stillness is what a dark psychologist fears most. In that quiet discomfort, your brain starts reaching inward. In that stillness, you begin to generate thoughts like, this relationship is unhealthy, I am being manipulated, or I need to make a plan to leave. These are the original thoughts a manipulator must suppress at all costs. Their strategy is one of input flooding. A manipulator is the outside noise. They will ensure you never have stillness. They will be the first thing you deal with when you wake up, cramming your mind with their thoughts, fears, and agendas before you are even awake. Topic 71. They will flood you with text messages, demands, and crises all day. The goal is to keep your brain in a constant state of reaction. so you never have the breathing room to generate your own plan for escape. They need your voice to be diluted by theirs. Protecting that still, silent space is not just a creative act, it is a revolutionary act of self-preservation.